Raindrops are falling on my head, and just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops are falling.
Folks, welcome to another episode. I hope everybody's staying safe and sanitized and keeping up with your work. Today we have a very special edition. It's called How a Bill Becomes a Law. So we've looked at Congress, we've seen how it's organized, we've looked at their members, we've looked at their powers, we've seen their staff, we've seen the committees, the select, the standing, and the joint. I think we have a better idea of how it's laid out and what Congress does. So let's look at this, what Congress does, because we keep saying they make laws and they make bills. But let's look. How does a bill become a law? Here's the process. Well, first of all, it starts off as an idea. Anybody in the United States of America can have an idea about anything, and that can start off as a bill. And I'm going to go ahead and throw this slide up here and give this to you now and kind of pause, because you must understand that the bill must pass in both parts of Congress exactly the same way. If one house changes any little punctuation or any little word or anything, it has to start all over. So keep that in mind as we go through this procedure. The bill must pass exactly the same form in both houses. So how does a bill become a law? Well, first of all, let's look at becoming a bill. So once someone has an idea, that idea has to be sponsored by a member of Congress. Someone has to sign off on it. Someone in either the House or the Senate must introduce the bill. They have to put it in draft form, which means they have to write it out. It has to be studied, and it has to be edited and changed. And then it has to be introduced to Congress, which means it's given a title, like H.R. 30316. Once it's been thought of and then it's been sponsored and introduced, it is then assigned to one of these committees. The committee chairperson decides whether they want to throw this bill or whether they want to study it, right? And if they decide to study it, here's what they do. The committee has 3 steps. They either send the bill to the next stage and advance it. They either kill the bill right there, or they can do this weird option called pigeonhole, which means that they place the bill to the side without a vote, and eventually that bill will probably die. I like to think of it like this. Since it's called pigeonholed, let's think about what would happen if you take a real-life pigeon and put it in your pocket, and you ignore it. What's going to happen eventually to that pigeon? Death. If a committee decides to pass it to the next stage, it is then given to a subcommittee, which is like a smaller committee. They're going to study the bill in depth. They're going to look at the good, the bad. They're going to look at who this bill will affect. They're going to go around and get the public reaction by taking polls and surveys, right? They're going to have public hearings, which means they're going to have meetings held in public. They're going to allow people to give their opinions on the bill. And the subcommittee, once they do all these things and study this with a fine-tooth comb, is going to have the exact same options as the last committee had. They can either send it to the next phase, they can kill it, or they can pigeonhole it. So if the subcommittee decides to send it to the next phase, guess what? It goes back to the large committee. And the large committee is going to discuss what the subcommittee found. They're going to make changes if necessary. And then they're going to vote. Do we want to send it to the next house? Once the bill is sent to the next house, the bill is read out loud for the first time just to get the general reaction. Parties' leaders try to schedule a time where people can debate the bill. Members research the bill. They look at the pros and cons. They want to have good arguments, so they go ahead and do those T-charts like I had you do. They have the argument before they have it in real life. They have it in their head. They list all their arguments for and all their arguments against. That way they know they're prepared. Keep in mind, when you're debating, it means you get to voice your opinions on the bill, and it can be heated. You can get into arguments, but there are rules. Time is limited in the House of Representatives. You got 435 people. You can't let everybody give an hour speech. But in the Senate, you can go on all day. It's called a filibuster. And congressmen do this when they want to kill a bill. They're going to take up all the time of debating just up here babbling. Check this out. A senator can stand up on a pulpit in front of the Senate and talk a bill to death. It's called a filibuster. It is not illegal, and you don't even have to talk about the bill. Ted Cruz very famously read Green Eggs and Ham.
I intend to speak in support of defunding Obamacare until I am no longer able to stand. Most Americans could not give a flying flip about a bunch of politicians in Washington. Who cares What the American people care about is their own lives. On a Saturday or Sunday morning when your dad's making pancakes, it is very cool when he can like flip them and make them do a flip high in the air and catch them. He also, I will credit my father, he invented, this wasn't for the restaurant, but he did it anyway, he invented green eggs and ham. I don't believe there's been a day on this Senate floor that I haven't worn my argument boots. I took the coward's way out, and so went and purchased some black tennis shoes. I am not in my argument boots, and I'll confess, I really do feel embarrassed by that. You know, there's an old saying, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. If you will forgive me, I want to take the opportunity to read 2 bedtime stories to my girls. I do so like green eggs and ham. Thank you, Sam I Am. Note folks in the gallery who just waved, I'm not sure if they do have their electronics. Well, if you tweet, it may end up here and I may have the chance to read it. I want to point out just a few words of wisdom from Duck Dynasty. Redneck rule number 1. Most things can be fixed with duct tape, extension cords. I will say standing here after 14 hours, standing on your own feet, there's sometimes some pain, sometimes some fatigue that is involved. But you know what? There's far more pain involved in rolling over.
So debating just means we're going to discuss it. And sometimes this discussing can mean you have someone who tries to kill the bill, so you don't discuss it. That's called a filibuster. But what happens when you decide to vote? So now everyone's heard their opinions on this bill. You've got the filibuster over. Now it's time to vote. There are 3 types of voting, folks. You can voice vote, which means everybody in favor say yeah. Everybody opposed say no. You can do a standing vote, which means stand up if you agree, but then you have to go like this. And imagine doing that in the House of Representatives. Most places do a roll call, which means you're going to vote yes or no digitally, and it's going to show up behind you like these screens at the bottom right corner. Keep in mind, the bill must pass in exactly the same form. So once it's introduced in one house, it's given to a committee, then a subcommittee, then back to the committee, then it's debated. And then if that house decides they want to pass it on to the next house, guess what? The exact same process has to happen all over again.
Committee.
Imagine if the House of Representatives goes through all that process, they send it to the Senate, and the Senate changes one word. Guess what has to happen? It goes all the way back. It is a long, drawn-out process, folks. But let's assume that both houses agree and decide to pass it. They like it in exactly the same form, folks. It goes to the president. Once it's sent to the president has 4 options. 2 of these are easy, 2 of these are not. So let's do the easy ones first. The easiest one is the president loves it and signs it, automatically making it a law that day. The other easy option is that the president hates it and he just vetoes it and it's done right there. So let's look at these other 2 options that's not this easy. One option is called a pocket veto. This is where the president does not sign the bill and Congress has already kind of closed out. And the bill just kind of dies 10 days later. But what happens if the president just doesn't sign the bill and Congress is still in session? Well, the bill automatically becomes a law in 10 days. Someone asked me, why would a president not sign the bill? You can have a president that might agree with the bill, but would never put their name on it. Like, for example, let's say Donald Trump, who is a Republican, gets a bill that says he wants to legalize gay marriage. Now, let's say that Donald Trump doesn't personally have a problem with this. Do you think as a Republican president, he's going to put his name on that bill? No. So you could have a case where a president doesn't morally disagree with the bill, but politically he cannot or she cannot put their name on that bill. So therefore, they just don't sign it. If the president vetoes the bill, it's not over. Congress can actually override a presidential veto, and it's very rare. It happened the first year I was teaching in 2016. Congress overrode Barack Obama's veto. It does happen, but it is very, very rare. Here's what they need to make it happen. They need a 2/3 majority vote in each house in order to override a presidential veto. Like I said, it's rare, but it does happen. So folks, hopefully this week wasn't too bad with the notes. I tried to keep it as simple and as basic as I possibly could. I hope everybody's staying safe and sanitized. I hope you're staying caught up with your work. I can't wait to see you back physically next week when I come back to school. And until next time, I'll see you later. Peace.